Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. We pick back up in Kitab al-Salah under the shurut of Salah. فقال المؤلف, the muallif says, منها استقبال القبلة فلا تصح بدونه إلا لعاجز. So now we get to the next shart. And depending on how you're numbering them, this should be a sadis, yani this should be the sixth that we're discussing. Minha, yani min ayyi shay, min, he says from it or from them. And this is a reference to shurut. Those ones that are students of the Arabic language as well, you will notice it says minha, laysa minhu, or laysa minhum, or hunna. Limada? Why is it minha? Why is it female? Shart is male, mudhakkar. But jam'a, shurut, because jam'a, taksir, غير عاقل, it is muannath. This is a little fun thing for the lugha brothers that did the nahu and stuff with us. طيب. Minha, from them, yani from the shurut of salah, istiqbalul qibla, to face the qibla. طيب. So from the shurut of salah. طيب, what did we mention about the shurut? The shurut have to be in place قبل العبادة, before the ibadah. So before you start your salah, you need to face the qibla. And the salah is not acceptable بدونه, يعني without it. Without facing the qibla, the salah is not acceptable. So this is the asal. If a shart is not in place, salah is not acceptable. So somebody starts to make salah and they're not facing the qibla, their salah is batila. Now, how much is considered facing? Meaning, let's say the qibla is in this direction, you're a little bit off. 5 degrees, 10 degrees, what's acceptable? Right? Or does it have to be like to the milliliter or whatever, millicentimeter, millimeter? Nah, yani, and we'll talk about that. Yani, and in different places it will be different. For example, if you're standing in Mecca, in the Haram, and the Kaaba is in front of you, how much can you vary? And if you're standing in a desert in Mongolia, and how much can you differ? And what is the adilla? What is the dalil for it? Inshallah, we'll get to it. Tayyib. Now, what is the asal? That salah without facing the qibla is invalid. Tayyib. But then the muallif mentions illa. This is called istithna. In Arabic, remember, we have al-istithna. Yani it is the exceptions made to what the asal is. Li'ajiz. What is ajiz? The one who is unable. Tayyib. Now, unable doesn't mean that he's not willing. That's different. Like some people, like you tell them, qibla, I'm not able. What do you mean you're not able? Turn. Right? But ajiz in Arabic, yani when you're really not able to. طيب. So the first exception is the one who is unable. طيب. First thing, what is the dalil that facing the qibla is a shart for salah, and without it salah is not acceptable? Here is no khilaf, ijma' of the ummah. We can mention this from the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, as we mentioned earlier. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to face the qibla for salah. In many sahih ahadith, in many rawayat, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he ordered to face the qibla thumma kabbara, then to make the takbir. So there is amr of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then there are many ahadith from the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, but what is enough to say? Ibn Abdul Barr, for example, the Maliki great scholar in At-Tamheed, he mentioned there is ijma' of the ummah on this issue. Also Ibn Hazm in Maratib al-Ijma', and Sheikh Islam Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyyah in the Maratib on his Hashiyah or on his Nuqd on the work of Ibn Hazm, Ibn Mundhir in his Ijma', and also Imam Muwaffaquddin Ibn Qudama in Al-Mughni, and Al-Nabawi in Al-Majmu' have all established that this is a hukam ijma'an. Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, Zahiri, and everybody else agrees. So there's no need to get into depth. I mean, from the Quran, Sahih Ahadith, Ijma of the Ummah, no doubt you need to face the Qibla. Tayyib. What is the dalil that if you are unable to, if you are physically, and we'll talk about who is ajiz and what are their different types, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes that away. First thing, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have taqwa of Allah, مَا تَسْتَطَعْتُمْ, what you are able to, the best that you are able to. Right? بِإِسْتِعْدَادٍ, what you have the ability to do. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you an order, you have to do it to the best of your ability. If you are unable, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes that burden away. Okay? So what is unable? The ulama in their shuruh of Zād, and I collected these from a few different shuruh, from Rawdat al-Murbi' and then from the bigger shuruh from Sheikh ibn Uthman, Sharh al-Mumti'. I made a list. So first is the one who is unable to determine the Qibla. Okay? For example, you're traveling, your car breaks down, it's cloudy, you don't have your cell phone with you, you don't have a compass, you don't have anybody to ask. It happens, people, their car breaks down somewhere. If you have the sun, then you can make your ijtihad, you can do your best to determine the Qibla. Let's say it's night. Well, you can try to use the stars. I mean, most of us are not well versed in reading the stars and knowing north, south, east, west, but you have the ability. But let's give an example. It's cloudy. So you can't see the sun, you can't see the stars, there is no coverage, or you don't have your cell phone, you don't have a compass, you don't have shadows to go by, you have nobody to ask, there's no masjid there, your car broke down, you're just there, it's time for Salah. You have to make Salah. Here, you will do your best. Whether it's looking at mountains or trees or whatever, and you will do your best. And here, even though you made the Salah, maybe not facing the Qibla, and you don't know, but here you're ajiz, you're unable, you did your best, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts. Now, if somebody points out the Qibla to you later, do you repeat your Salah or no? No. Because the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, this happened in their time, they made the Salah, when the sun came and they noticed that they made the wrong Qibla, but because they had done their best for ijtihad and they were ajiz, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted the Salah. Now, there is no farq, there is no difference between fard, nafal, musafir, muqim in being ajiz. Meaning whether it's an obligatory salah or a nafal salah, or whether you are a resident or a traveler, if you are ajiz, if you're unable to determine the qibla, there is no difference there. طيب. والإنسان مريض لا يستطيع أن يحرك. If a person is sick, and this is not from the matan, this is my own list that I've made to explain. So the first, you're just unable. Second thing, you're sick. And you're so sick, you're not able to move. Right? Let's say you're making salah with isharat or with your eyes or laying or whatever else. You're unable to physically move towards the qibla. You're ajiz here. If somebody can move you, that's a different issue. But if somebody can't, you're in a hospital, you're by yourself, you have to make salah. Here, you will make salah. Let's say you're not totally paralyzed. Let's say you're quadriplegic, they say, right? And you're in a chair, not in a wheelchair. You can't turn it, right? In a hospital here in America, where there's no Muslims around, the nurse can't turn you, and whatever. Here, you make salah facing anyway, if you're able to. Now again, this is when you have, and you're ajiz, you're unable. If you're able to tell somebody, can you face me towards the qibla, then you must, even in that case. But if you're unable, right, salah time comes, it's going to exit, there's nobody to turn you, you're facing whatever direction, you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept the salah and you make your salah. Tayyib. Third, when you have somebody who's tied up, مربوط بالعربي, مربوط مربوط, when you have been tied up, right? Let's say our brother Umar is traveling and he's going through the Amazon, and some of the females there, they find him and they kidnap him, and they want this handsome man here, they tie him up, right? Now he's tied up, right? He needs to make salah, right? Maybe he can move his hands at least, inshallah. And even if he can, then he'll have to do it without moving his hands. But he's tied up, he can't change his direction. Okay? May Allah protect us. I mean, I could have used worse examples, but let's not, right? So now he has to make salah. In that situation, he will be ajiz and he will make salah in whichever way, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not hold him accountable because you fear Allah as much as you can. Tayyib. In a time of harb or maraka, if you're timing of a battle and it's such a situation, even in battle, there is Salatul Khawf, and we'll discuss that later on, inshallah. Will you still face the Qibla? But let's say for example, you're in a trench by yourself, right? And now it's a long battle, it's going on, and if you leave facing the enemy, they will kill you. Now you can make Jam'a bayna salatin, but let's say it's going to be all day. Now you can't make Jam'a bayna thalatha salawat or arba'a or khamsa, right? You can't make like Jam'a for all the salawat together, right? So now you have to make salah. You don't have somebody else so you make salah while they watch, right? So in that case, you will face the enemy, make your salah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it because you are ajiz. Tayyib. Another, these are unusual situations. Usually you will not have this. Let's say you are running away where your life is in danger. Tayyib. Khataratul nafs, to the person's life. From the maqasid of Sharia is that the life is protected, and there are adilla from the aqwal and af'al of Sahaba and things as well, but these are very easy to understand. There's no khilaf on these issues, right? So let's say the enemy is somebody's trying to rob you, they're trying to kill you, and you're running, you're on a horse or a camel or your car or you're on foot, whatever, and you're running in a direction that if you stop to face a different direction towards the Qibla, then you will be harmed. Right? I'll give you an example. Some of the Salaf, some of the aqwal af'al from the Sahaba and Tabi'un, they would be on horse. And the enemy, like for example, the Romans or whatever, would be coming in big force. And they would have to be try to get a message to a people. Now this is not a regular situation. Right? Now if they stopped the horse or they got down, they would be killed. But they weren't fighting, they were running. Maybe they were getting like a message across. So in that situation, even then, they cannot miss the salah on its time. They can make jam'ah, but let's say this is fajr. You can't make jam'ah fajr, and ishraq is close. So even in that state, they will make salah to the best of their abilities, facing any way they can. Tayyib. The other exception the muallif mentions is for the nafil salawat. Mutanaffila, that which is nafil, not the fard. Okay, so now here, when you were ajiz, when you were unable, there was no difference between nafil and fard, riding or walking or any of that, right? Those were inability was the only shart. But the other exception is for nafil salah, for a rakib, for the one who is riding and he is fi safar, traveling. Sa'ir fi safar. Tayyib. Now this is a different case scenario. This is not where you are unable to totally, but you are traveling and you are riding. Right? Now we'll talk about people who are traveling while walking later on in this bab. Leave that aside for now. So right now we have 3 or 4, you could say, shurut to this exception. One, this is a nafal salah. So what is taken out from that? The faraid. Right? This is nafal salah. So what is not going to be a part of this exception? The fard salah. So let's say you are traveling, no wars, nobody trying to kill you, nobody trying to tie you up, none of that, right? You're traveling in your car. You can stop it, right, if you want. And the time for salah comes and you say, you know what, I'm just going to make salah driving. La. But what if you're a passenger? You're not the one driving. It's fard salah, dhuhr. I'm just going to pray sitting. La, you cannot. Okay? And on the camel, why? Because of Sahih Hadith, and we'll go over the Hadith inshallah coming up. There's a riwayah from Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, also from Anas ibn Malik, authentic Hadith. But this is from the af'al of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Tayyib. But now the shart is not just that. So first thing, you are riding. For fard salah, what do you have to do? Stop. Park the car, get out, make your salah, standing. If you're not the driver, tell the driver, I gotta make salah. Let me out. I gotta stop, I gotta stand, I gotta have qiyam. Right? We're not even talking about qiyam here, but this is for facing the qibla. I have to then face the qibla and I have to make my salah. Let's say you are traveling or you are in a car praying nafil, like, because that was the first shart, that this has to be nafil. But you are going from here to Costco. You decide, I'm going to pray sitting. Well, you can't. This is something for safar, not for muqim. So it has to be nafil. You have to be riding. Let's say you're walking, and you say, I don't care about the qibla. I'm just gonna make salah walking. I'm traveling. I'm just gonna make salah nafil, like fard we already took out, right? La, it has to be for riding. There is a discussion about the one who walks, but we'll come to that inshallah. Then it has to be during travel, not musafir, in the sense that, let's say we discussed this earlier. If you're gonna go to a certain place for a certain amount of days, when do you become muqim? After the 4th day. Under 20 salawat, you're musafir if you're niyyah. So let's say I plan on staying in LA, right? Brookhurst. So I want to go to LA and I'm going to stay there for 3 days, right? On my way, I'm a musafir. When I get to LA, shari'an, I'm a musafir, right? But does that mean when I'm in LA, in my hotel, as a musafir, I'm going to make nafal salawat not facing the qibla? La. There, you're not during the travel. You're not riding. You're there now, right? Tayyib. Now, the question gets to be, what does it mean musafir? Okay. Is the musafir here the shari'i hukam of safar, which is 4 burad, which is around 47 Hashimi miles, which is around 80, 88 something kilometers, right? That is what considers you to be a musafir. Tayyib? You remember that, right? Meaning from here to, let's say, Diamond Bar in LA, and you're going, that's more than that distance. Here, you're a musafir. Here, that is not the definition. Why? Because the ahkam of jam'ah, of combining, or qasr, shortening, have been mentioned with ahadith of shari'i safar. But here, safar has not been given with a distance. So what is the mu'tamidun في المذهب, يعني ظاهر في المذهب كما يعني في الروض المربع البيوتي in روض المربع says في سفر مباح طويل أو قصير. In the Sharh of Zād al Mustaqni, he says, the Sheikh ibn Uthman in Sharh Zād al Mustaqni also explains that here, if you look at the ahadith, and we'll get to the ahadith inshallah, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed the nafal raqib while riding, he did not necessitate a distance, and nor did the Sahaba necessitate it, unlike Jama' al Qasr. So here, whatever is considered tayyib. So now I'm going from here to Vieng Dong. They still have Vieng Dong here or no? Shut it down. Okay. Is this safar? Linguistically, would you consider me a traveler? No. I'm just going to the store down the street, right? But let's say I'm going from here to San Isidro, right? Well, unless I have my office or something, linguistically, that can be considered traveling, even though that may not be 47 Hashimi miles. You understand the difference or no? Tayyib. So whatever is mubah, tayyib. Now this is another thing in the madhab. It has to be for something that is permissible. Any rukhsa you have cannot be utilized for haram. Tayyib. And it does not affect the hukam for long or short travel here, whatever is considered in the linguistics of being a musafir. But what does that tell you? لا يجوز لمقيم حدرا. Right? Meaning that if it's not linguistically considered travel, if you're muqim in your area and you are there in your own area, you're not going out of there, then you cannot make nawafil sitting and not facing the qibla. Sitting and standing we'll get to, it's a different shart, but it's connected. طيب, now we get to adilla. There is no doubt the hadith in muttafaqun alayhi in Bukhari and Muslim from Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being on the travel and thing, and he would continue to make his salawat, including the witr, on his ride, illa except al-maktuba, except for the fard salawat. طيب, and now this hadith is muttafaqun alayhi, and there are many rawayat to it. Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu reported it. طيب, a few ahkam to take. First hakam to take, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would make nafal salawat while riding, but for the maktuba, for the faraid, he would stop and get down. طيب, so let's say you're traveling from here to the Bay Area, no doubt that's a shari'i travel, but even then for fard salawat you have to stop and get down and face the qibla and pray facing the qibla standing. طيب. What is another istidlal you can make from this hadith? Not the point of the dars, but just to understand istidlal. Witr, is it wajib, fard, or mustahab? Nafl. From this hadith we say it's nafl. Right? There are many other hadith on it. Ali radiyan, there's a sarih hadith where he says the witr is not wajib like the other salawat, it's nafl. But here from this hadith as well. Why? Because if it was obligatory, then you would not be able to pray it while being on your ride. طيب. The next hukam that's related to this, which will bring us to another hadith as well, is that if you are praying nafal while traveling, طيب, and you are going to pray without stopping, then you have to begin facing the qibla. طيب. So let's say you're driving from here to the Bay Area for fard salawat, you stop, but now on the way you want to make a lot of nawafil. One of my shuyukh, may Allah protect him, hafadhahu Allah, Sheikh Abu Muhammad Aminullah al-Bishawri, I used to travel with him, and in traveling, subhanallah, either you would be talking about masail or about something beneficial of knowledge or books or scholars, or if not, he would not waste time, he would start making nawafil. And he would pray nawafil sometimes for hours while traveling. Right? And this is the sunnah, not to waste time. Talk about, it's not like you shouldn't talk about beneficial things, teaching and learning and knowledge, yes. But if you're not, don't just talk about useless things, instead pray your nawafil. Right? Even in safar, in safar, the rawatib, those nafal salawat that are tied to the fard salawat are not, it's not sunnah to pray them, like the 4 or 2 before dhuhr and the 4 or 2 after dhuhr, or the ghair mu'kida 4 before asr or 2, or the maghrib 2 before, after adhan before the salah, and 2 afterwards, or the isha 2 between adhan and iqama, and then 2 or 4 afterwards. Those are the rawatib. It's not sunnah, but it is sunnah to make your 2 rakat nafal salawat before fajr and your witr, even when you're traveling. But just making nafal mutlaqan, just nawafil even while traveling, is from the sunnah. Tayyib. So here, but the shart is you begin the salah facing the qibla. We're talking about nafal here. After that, if the car or the train or the plane moves away from the facing the qibla, you continue your salah. Tayyib. And the dalil for this hadith of Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu, he says, Anna Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kana idha safara. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he was making safar, فأراد أن يتطوع, if he wanted to make nafal salawat, استقبل القبلة, he used to face the qibla, and then kabbara, then he would make takbir, ثم صلى, and then he would make salah, حيث وجهه, whichever way his face would then turn, راكبه, his ride, And this hadith is reported by Imam Ahmad and Abu Dawud and Al-Bayhaqi and Ibn Mulaqin, who is also known as Ibn Nahwi, considered to be Sahih in Badr al-Munir. Sheikh Albani and others also graded to be Sahih. So here what does it say? The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was traveling, he would be on his ride, yani on his camel or horse or whatever. And if he wanted to make nafal salawat, not fard, again this is the dalil, this is not for the fard salawat, he would be sitting, he would make takbir, but he would face the qibla. And then whichever way, yani in those days the camels would go by themselves, they knew the paths, right? So whichever way the camel would then turn, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sitting in nafal salah, he would continue to pray it, even if the camel left the way of the qibla. Tayyib. Now if it was fard salah, you were making fard salah, and somebody moved you away from the qibla, what happens? Salah is batila. You have to face, unless you fight it off and continue to face it, but if you continue to face away from the qibla even for a minute, your salah is batila. But in nafal, if you began facing the qibla, you said takbir while traveling or while riding, not if you stop somewhere and you start your nafal salah and then you're like, I'm going to face away from the qibla. La. And this is something important. Like we see a lot of brothers. They see two extremes. One extreme when they're like trying to find the millimeter of where to face, and the other extreme, some brothers, even in front of the haram, I saw it. Started salawat, they're facing away from, and you can see them physically not facing the Kaaba. And you're like, what? You see the line? You see the Kaaba right there? What are you doing? Right? Tayyib. Allahu musta'an. Tayyib. وماشي. Tayyib. And what about the one, mashin, who's walking? Tayyib. If somebody is walking while traveling, for fard salah, obviously they need to stop. For nawafil, we have a lot of khilaf and within the madhab and with other madhahib. I'm not going to go deep into it. The mu'tamid of the madhab is that they're still considered musafir. They can, for nafal, if they are in a busy travel, they can do it while walking, but they have to face the qibla and they have to make ruku and sujood facing the qibla. Why? Because they have the ability to do that, unlike the one who is on a camel or horse or a car or so on. Tayyib. But the best thing if you're walking, if you're traveling, and if you're making nawafil, to get away from the khilaf, just face the qibla the whole time. Tayyib. There is a lot of discussion and things, but there's no sarih adillah for the mashin, so I'm not going to go deep into it. Tayyib. Now, from the furud, for the one who is close to the qibla, is to face it عينها, to exactly to it. ومن بعد, the one who is away, then towards it to the best of their ability. So what does that mean? Let's say you are in Mecca. You are very close to the qibla. What is the qibla? The Kaaba. And what is the hikmah of us facing the Kaaba? This is the ittihad of the ummah to come together. And there are many other hikam. But so here you're in Mecca in front of Masjid al-Haram, for example. Even if you're not in front of the Kaaba, and you start your salah 10 degrees away from Masjid al-Haram. Is that acceptable? La. What is the dalil for that? The dalil for that is the hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made salah inside the haram, in front of the Kaaba, and they said he never left vision of the Kaaba. He kept his focus on the Kaaba. So meaning he didn't start facing a little bit away. He faced it exactly. So if you are close to the Qibla, to the Kaaba, then you have to face it exactly, right? To the best of your ability again. But if you're further from it, then let's say you are in Alaska, okay? Or in San Diego. You want to face the Qibla. You get the compass, or you get your app, or you look at the mountains, you look at the sun, you ask somebody, you do your best. You're not going to hit it 100%. Right? The Kaaba is small in comparison to looking at it that way. So you're not going to get it 100%. So what's acceptable? And there is a lot of khilaf of madahib. Right? But I'm not going to get into it because there is a sarih, clear dalil. The clear Sarih Dalil is the Hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is reported by At-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, At-Tabrani, in Al-Awsat, and Imam Ahmad. He discussed some weakness on its. When you look at the riwayat from Imam Ahmad on Kalam on the Sanad, he mentioned it. But Imam An-Nawawi in his Takhrij Al-Mukhalis, Al-Ahkam, in his book of Takhrij, he authenticated. He said this hadith is Sahih. And Imam Al-Bani and others, Ahmed Shakir, in their later works of Takhrij, looking at the different asanid, they consider it to be an authentic hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ma bayn al-mashriqi wal-maghrib qiblatun." What is between the mashriq and the maghrib is the qibla. Tayyib. And this is when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in Medina. So in Medina, Mecca is which direction from Medina? Anybody know? La. Medina is further up, Mecca is down, so it's pretty much south. So Mashriq and Maghrib would be the two other sides, and Mecca would be in the middle of that, right? So what does that tell you? You have about 180 degrees. It's wide, but there is a hadith on it. Some ulama said 90 degrees in this, but when you have a sarih hadith, it's not our place to now have khilaf. When you are far away. Tayyib, having said that, if you see the direction of the Qibla, is it acceptable for you, knowing the direction of the Qibla, to pray away from it? La. And we see this all the time in masajid, especially in a particular community that I won't mention in fear of offending them. In our masjid, I see it all the time. People come in, there are lines, there's a mihrab, there is the Qibla, it's very clear. They're a good 25 degrees away. Allahu Akbar. Ya akhi, what are you doing? You cannot on purpose leave the Qibla to any degrees. When you know it. Right? Now, different cases, let's say we're at the park. We ask the brother, which way is the Qibla? And some brothers, mashallah, they have not just the compass and not just this, and then they're like, half an inch. Ya akhi. We're not going to get it like that, right? You don't have a clear indication. You're at a park, we don't know. We look at the best. In that situation, when does the 180 come into play? Does that mean we're like, yeah, just face anyway? No. We do our best. We say, you know what, this way is the Qibla. Then we make our salah. Let's say after salah, somebody tells you, no, you were 20 degrees off. Do you have to repeat your salah? La. Within 180 degrees here, you're good. Right? So when you are outside, do your best and then khalas. Don't get. I was with one of the shuyukh in Emirat, and one new Muslim brother with a lot of mashallah zeal, we were praying in the Sheikh's house, like we're in the Sheikh's house, right? And we're praying, and we started to make salah, and this brother was like, "Can I check the Qibla?" And the Sheikh's like, "You're in my house." It's kind of like strange, but he's like, "Yeah." So he starts to check, and he's pretty much like maybe on his compass, it's about a degree off, right? And he's like, "It's one." And the Sheikh's like, "What are you doing?" And then he explained the hukam. You are away from the Kaaba and things, and if you're generally in the right direction, you're good. Don't get that anal about it, right? But at the same time, do your best to know which way is the Kaaba, which way is the Qibla, and then make salah. Don't on purpose face away from it. Tayyib? So this is some of the ahkam of the exceptions to facing the Qibla. Now, how do you know which way is the Qibla? How will you know? So the first thing the Muallif mentions is فَإِنْ أَخْبَرَهُ, if the person is told, ثقة, from somebody who is reliable, بيقين, with surety. Two sifat here. Let's say I come to Abu Ilyas's house and we need to make salah, and Abu Ilyas tells me, I ask him, which way is the Qibla? It's his house, I don't know, and he tells me it's this direction, for example. Tayyib, I know him to be thiqa, I know him to be reliable, right? And he is sure because it's his house, he's looked it up. So now I shouldn't second guess him. I shouldn't be like, well, let me check in my app, right? Right? And now I should take that from him. But let's say somebody who's a liar, kadib, known, يعني شارب الخمر, drinks khamar, حالق اللحية, فاسق, openly, and he's no longer thiqa. His adl or his dabt would be not credible. Some guy comes off the street, he's got no beard, he's got a beer can in his hand, and he's like, you need to pray, I'll help you out. It's this way. I'm sure of it. I've checked it. I have a compass. Can I take his word without checking it? La. Because he is not thiqa. Let's say a very good, honest, mashallah, brother comes with a big sunnah, mashallah, lahya, and thawb is above the ka'bain to the half of his shin, and mashallah, he has nur of Islam on his face, and he's got a big sajda mark, and he just came out of making salah, and then yani we're going somewhere, and then I say, do you know which way the qibla? And he's like, I'm not sure, might be that way. Can I take his opinion without checking? La. Because even though he's thiqa, laysa bi yaqinin. It's not with surety. So in those cases, then you would still have to do your ijtihad. But if somebody thiqa with yaqeen tells you this is the first way, you can determine the qibla without an issue. Tayyib, or if you see maharib al-islamiyya, amila biha. What are maharib al-islamiyya? Mihrab is the place of salah. When you go to the masjid, like our masjid, when you go, there is that little niche, I think they call it, right? Niche, where the imam stands. This is called al-mihrab. Maharib is jam'a. In our time, usually in the masjid they have this. In the old days, and if you've been to Quds, I know you have, right? In Quds, in Masjid al-Aqsa, you will see a bunch of these small ones sitting around. Like not inside the masjid, but outside. And in the old days, when you were traveling, instead of a musalla, they would have one of these. And there were many benefits to it. In Al-Aqsa, they would have it for where the teachers would sit and teach halaqat. Right? They would teach halaqat in them. But on the way, in the old days, they would have these so you could stop and know where the qibla is and make salah there. So it would be like a little musalla. It wouldn't be covered and things. They would just have a mihrab. In Saudi, you will still see it in some places. And in some other countries, while traveling, I've seen them, old ones, right? And it's just a little mihrab, and then the little flat area, and people, when they know, then you know the qibla. So if it's a mihrab al-Islamiyya, not just somebody that's made one, it's meant for that, and it is a sign of where people make salah, then you can take that to be a sign, right? Now, in our times, I'll give you another, and this is one of the benefits of looking at some of the classic works here, and then explaining some of the contemporary issues. For example, in Muslim countries, or majority Muslim countries, in every hotel, not all of them, in some of them, you have to have an indicator towards the qibla. Right? Now this is something you can rely upon. Right? If you go to Malaysia and some countries, you go to the hotel, you don't know the qibla, you could call room service, but they're like, qibla is towards Makkah, right? You can look on the ceiling and you'll see a little arrow. Sometimes it'll have a little Kaaba and then it'll have an arrow. So you can know the qibla, so then you rely upon that. Okay? This is another sign. I think we'll stop here inshallah for the sake of time, and we'll pick up at the next dars inshallah. I want to stop the recording.